Hey there. Thanks for tuning in. You ready for another episode of my Bigfoot sighting? Alright then, let's do this.
Seen a bunch of rundown no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, love's in the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah.
My Bigfoot things started in like 1992 when I first went to having experiences with anything like this. And I never really paid that much attention to it. Tree knocks while I was hunting. My son and myself, we were hunting one evening. It was late, and we heard something that sounded like somebody whacking two fence posts together, wood fence posts, or two baseball bats together. Real loud, clear. Wasn't that far from us. But we didn't know what that was. We heard it several times. We'd hear it at the house at night, always late in the evening. And then after dark, we would hear it in the house. We might hear it for a week straight and then not hear it again for another month. And then later on, as time progressed, I had one smack the side of my house. I didn't know what that was. I thought that was somebody fooling around, just acting silly, but I live way out where there's no reason for anybody to be out there, so it kind of upset me a little bit, and I took matters into my own hands to ensure that they didn't do that again or didn't want to do that again. The law come out, and we could never find anything. Well, after that, I had a pine tree that was next to my house. It was about, I'm going to say 7 inches around. And it was pushed over on my house. It wasn't but about 6 foot from my house. They pushed it over. The wind wasn't blowing, nothing like that. The top wasn't broke in it, but the roots were pushed out. As that happened, then I have another slapping on the house. This is all one night. Slapping on the side of the house. And I thought that it was somebody running. You can hear it, but it sounded like someone running with like oversized shoes on. They were slapping. It wasn't smooth like what I hear people say that it was. What that I had was not smooth. They made some racket. And, like I said, I took care of that and had no more anything where I saw anything for a long time. And I started listening to YouTube and things like that. I would see things, but I wasn't paying any attention to that. Out in the woods while I was hunting and all that. I bow hunt. So I'm sitting extremely still. I hunt with a recurve bow. So I've got to be real still. With that being said, I've never saw anything else until I went to listening to YouTube stories and things like that and hearing what people were saying. That they would describe things. Well, I started looking when I'd be in the woods, and I went to seeing these things. I found broke limbs, a lot of broke limbs, and they're generally in one area. I don't find them everywhere. I find them like in one area. I found a track that was about 6 inches long. This was right after the snow. The snow was melting, and it was in some old sand, kind of clay sand. It was only about 6 inches long, going into some briars, and probably 4 inches wide. Had 4 toes on it. Wasn't a bear. Had a big toe with the neck so far down, but there was only 4 toes. And they was 2 or 3 of them tracks around. I didn't think to cast it or measure it or any of that. I just took a picture of it. Like I say, I got to noticing and was finding more and more tree breaks. They was down. They wasn't at the top of the trees. In the middle. Most of them was cedars. So I got watching, which I had game cameras set out for a long time. And I never got pictures of anything. Well, after I went to noticing all this stuff, I was hunting one day and walking back, And I had to walk like, I don't know, half a mile or so to get back up where I could come home. And all I had was a bow and a knife. I wasn't armed with anything at that time other than that. And I got the awfulest feeling I've never had before and have never had since. It was just a cold chill. It was right at dark for ways until I got away from a bunch of cedar trees. And then it quit. So I come on home and then later went hunting again. That don't scare me none. I went on home and later while I was hunting, coming from the same area, but it was earlier in the day. The sun was out. And I kept feeling kind of, no, I won't say uneasy, but different. And I got home, got up on my porch, and my dog was watching one side of the woods at the end of the driveway, and then he would look to the other side, just back and forth, back and forth. So what that I figured was I had one in the woods on one side following me, which I know I've got at least three that I've had dealings with, and one on the other side of the road in the woods. I was flanked on both sides, to put it normal. Never bothered. I've never had a rock thrown at me or any of that stuff, anything growl or nothing like that. Nothing mean, you might say. But I heard a pop. And right down over where the dog was looking at one time, he's a great hearing aid and he hears everything. I went by there the next day and the top, I measured it 8 feet and 11 inches up. The top of the tree was broke out right there. Well, all these breaks that I've been mentioning are in line with that tree going kind of west, you might say, northwest. And all that stuff is in a line, almost a perfect line. So I've started watching it and I found, like I said, the breaks. I've got pictures of them on my game cams, and I don't think that you get their pictures or anything visually with them unless they let you. That's just my thoughts on it. But I don't think you do unless they let you. People say that they've accidentally come up on them. I can believe that. But I was in them woods for years and never saw them. And then all of a sudden, I would see them. Down here, I've had tomatoes took off the vines, not like a bird would do it or something else. They didn't hurt the vine. Got every blueberry I had on the blueberry bush. Didn't hurt the bush. Just little silly things like that. Heard a howl one evening. It was a long ways off, but it was really, really loud. It wasn't, I'm assuming that that's what it was. But I've never heard anything before that sounded like that or after that sounded like that. In one area is where all this stuff takes place at. Within, I'm going to say a half-mile square of where that I'm talking about. Everything has been right there in that square. I'll be overrun with squirrels, and then I won't have any. There won't be any. I'll have deer everywhere. And when these guys are back around, you can pretty much tell when they're there because all the deer are gone. They don't hang around. I had horses that would come up in the evenings when they was around. I've noticed all this at the same time. They would stand under a security light. They wouldn't get off away from anything. They'd stand under the light. We found dead coyotes. I've heard some of these folks say that they don't like coyotes. That makes two of us. We found coyotes with their heads crushed just into mush right here in this area. So I'm figuring that's what happened to them. The one that I saw from the waist down, he was across the pond from me. And if he would have been 3 more feet, just 3 feet further back, I'd have never saw him. I didn't hear him. Now that I didn't hear. I didn't hear him. I just happened to glance and saw from the waist down. I couldn't tell you if it was male, female, or what. But it was kind of I'm going to call it a cocoa or coconut brown. It didn't really look black. Now the pictures of one of them that I've got a picture of a great big one. Now, he's black. That dude's a monster. He's big. And the other ones, you can't really, I'm going to say they're black, but I've got a good enough picture where you can see them. I had a picture of one that was kind of red looking. I only got one picture of him, and I never saw anything more about it. But, the one that he was walking up the hill, back in the woods across the pond. And like I said, if it had been 3 feet back, I wouldn't have seen him. I wouldn't ever even knew he was there. Just before that, about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, I was coming out to go to work, and I saw the best way to explain it is a trash bag, a big, hefty black trash bag, probably 5 or 6 feet off the ground. This is just what it kind of reminded me of. When a bag is being blown in the wind, how they'll float up and all that. Well, it was big. It was about 6, 7 feet off the ground that I was seeing going across. Wind wasn't blowing, but I didn't see any legs. It might have been far enough away that's why I didn't, but it would be there, and in about 6 or so feet, maybe give or take a little, would be empty. It was like it would appear, disappear, reappear, disappear, reappear, and disappear. It went right under a security light, but I couldn't tell you what it looked like other than it was just a big black blob that went across that. I didn't see any legs or anything unless, it could have been in the background where I didn't see it. But it went right straight across, went into the woods right where there's a tree break. It's right there at a tree break. A big cedar tree that's probably about 8 inches around, 7 to 8 inches around. The top of it is broke out, snapped off, pulled over, and moved. It didn't just fall down. It's moved over and laid in a specific way. It's laid there, which is by the place where I guess they've got them a little camping area or what they call a nest or whatever, where all the leaves are packed down in probably a 40, 50 foot area. It's just like you have a lot of traffic in there. There's trails going out of it, trails coming into it. But I've never seen anything right there. Ground X's, there's trees, little trees, not great big ones, just little trees, maybe 2 inches around, that are laid here and there in an X. Whatever that means, I don't know. But they do that. I've got several of them in that area where the black shadow thing went in. There's tree breaks in there. Bark stripped off of cedar trees, not tore off. It's been stripped off from like 7 feet up down on one side. It's never got the whole tree. Just like one side of it is stripped off. There's none of it laying on the ground. No claw marks or nothing like that in the tree where maybe a bear or a big cat would scratch. There's no marks on the tree. The tree itself is smooth, but the bark has just been peeled, you might say. Besides all that right there, the other time where I know that I was being followed, same area, I thought that one of the dogs had followed me. We've got a little house dog, and you know how they yap. Well, I thought it was him following me, trying to find me because he was barking. I was in a tree stand, and I called home, he was here at the house. So it yapped at me. It wasn't very far away. I never saw it. But it was sitting somewhere where it could see me because it would yap. Kind of not a howl, just sound like a little house dog, how they'll bark, but it would only do it once. It wouldn't get started and keep going like that. It would just do it once and stop. And a little bit later, it'd do it once and it would stop. Done it like 2 or 3 times, and then it was over. I never saw it. I did hear it. You can hear it moving around. And pictures that I've got, the black ones, that's why I say I think that you don't see them unless they want you to see them. Unless it is a pure D accident, because I know one of the pictures I've got is an accident. I got it from the back. And I measured that spot by the cedar tree, and it was like 7.5 feet tall. And I'm going to say it was a female because it looks like another smaller one was right behind it, looking around it away from where my camera was. And that particular camera didn't throw out a very big UV deal, so it was harder to see. I think they see the UV on the cameras. And I've got pictures of them where they look green. Unless you look real close and you can see the eyebrows, the face, the shoulders, the arms and all that. But sometimes it looks green. I've got one that just looks like a sunshine hitting on his back. It's kind of a silvery looking, and unless you're looking real close, you won't see it. All these are from one camera. It's right next to one of my deer stands. I wouldn't have thought they would have been that close to something like that, but they was. Most of the pictures I've got are from there. Some of them from right here where I saw that one, a camera that I had was like 6 feet off the ground. I have a picture of something's face. You can make it out. It's some kind of a big critter, but it's looking around and down into the camera. You can see its eyes. It's not blurry or nothing like that. It's a good picture. You can see one eye real good, but he didn't get right in front of the camera, so I don't know what that is. I know what it's not. And it looks kind of, I won't say like a gorilla, but it's not a human face neither. It's an animal face, and it's kind of a gray, white looking. You can see the wrinkles in the skin. I've tried to get a hold of some people to get them to look at some of these, that are credible, to see if they can make anything out of it. But as of now, I've not been able to get a hold of anybody that I've seen that I think would be credible. Like, I think that lady's name is Erin Ryder. She's a journalist or something. I've tried to get where I contact her because I've watched her. Just, I think she's serious about it. Instead of just somebody wanting to go out and whoop in the woods and beat trees together and things like that. But that's pretty much all that I've got right now. They're not here right now. They're not here. They'll be back probably, I'm going to say, in the fall. That's generally when I have most of my activities, in the fall and from there till spring, and a little while after spring. When it gets hot, I don't have that much activity, but they come and go. I don't think they go very far, but I can pretty much tell when they're not here. I'll have deer, which I've got deer with babies out here right now, and other wildlife that you don't see when they are around. I don't know if they're afraid of them, if they're meat eaters, if they're just opportunists or what. Like I said, I've never had no rocks thrown at me or anything that would lead me to believe that they're vicious or anything like that. And I've had them around me pretty close, but I've never had any kind of a violent altercation, even when I knew they was there. Had rocks thrown in my yard the size of maybe a softball or so, but nothing damaged or nothing tore up. Things like that you hear people say. I've not had that happen, but I do know they're there. They do exist. People can think that you're a nut if they want to, but when you see them and you go to paying attention to things around you, they camouflage real good. They're real good at it. But after you go to seeing them and then start looking around and paying attention, you'll know that they're there, and they know you're there. So there's really not much need in going out, I don't think, and shining flashlights and all that at night. They're going to be 50 miles away by the time you get close to them. That's just about all that I've got for right now. Like I said, I don't think that they're here right now. I've got too much activity. But that's all I've got.
My Bigfoot sighting happened in South Louisiana. I was young. It was approximately about 1967, 1966. I was a kid, and where I'm from, way in Louisiana, we have a lot of levee systems. And these levees are clear cut by the Corps of Engineers, and there's a lot of trails going back into the woods because on either side it's nothing but woods. On one side is the Atchafalaya Basin being held in by the levee. Now, we went to a picnic down around one of these levees. I was too young to remember which way, but I know it was in St. Martin Parish. We were there And we were either boiling crawfish or barbecuing. I'm not sure what we were doing, but we had a blanket spread out. My mom and dad were there, and my aunt and uncle. And they were talking and, of course, drinking beer. This is South Louisiana, and cooking. So I'm playing around there. I'm out there by myself with them. And I'm playing around there, and I noticed a trail going back into the woods, deep into the woods. And I wanted to explore it. You know, I knew the woods by then. Even though I was young, my dad had brought me out since I was 3. So I knew all the woods and all the animals and everything what I was doing. So I started walking down that trail and go straight back from where my dad and mom and them were. And I kept going straight back and keep checking back to see my dad could see me, because that was a big deal with him. He wanted to be able to see me at any time he looked up. So no matter where I was, I had to make sure he could see me. So I'm going down that trail. I keep looking back and nobody has noticed that I left. So I feel pretty comfortable. So I keep going down the trail. And then it turns to the right all of a sudden by a huge tree. And I thought to myself, if I take that right, which I wanted to take the right, if I take that right, my daddy won't be able to see me. Anyway, I go to turn around to get back to my dad. I said, well, I can't take that right. I better get back to the picnic. I might be in trouble already, you know. And as I was going to turn around to my left, to my right, at about my 2 o'clock position, I caught a movement. And that's the only thing that let me see this thing was move. If it hadn't moved, I'd have turned around and walked away. But it did move. It swayed from side to side, ever so slightly. And I froze. And I'm staring at this thing. It's not more than 15 feet away from me on the side of that tree that I was about to take a ride on. It was standing there, it was swaying from left to right, very slow, very little bit. And it looked at me, but all I could see was hair, really. I'd love to give you some detail on the face, but all I know is that I called it a hairy gorilla, because back then we didn't know anything about Bigfoot or Sasquatch or anything like that. I had no clue there was those things. So I looked at it and I froze. I couldn't move. But it only looked at me for a second, and then it huffed real loud, huff. And my legs kicked in, and I took off. And I ran back to the picnic, and right when I started coming out of the woods, I just dove right into the middle of the blanket and destroyed all the stuff. I mean, when I hit the ground, I thought my daddy's going to kill me. But I got up all of a sudden and said, y'all hear that? Y'all see that? A hairy gorilla just hollered at me. And they all started laughing, of course, and everything. And my uncle took in to berate me big time. Called me all kind of names, and I was scared of the woods and names that I can't repeat on here. But my dad never said a word, and he never moved. You know, I thought he'd have been all over me, man. Because my dad was a rough, old school Cajun man. He didn't take any BS from nobody. But he didn't say a word. I noticed he just had this little grin on his face. And my uncle's hollering, there's no hairy gorillas in Louisiana. And I look at my dad and he just says, there's no gorillas in Louisiana, son. So, I mean, what are you supposed to say when you just see a hairy gorilla? It hollers at you, you run. So what I did is I just went in the truck and went to sleep. Before I know it, we're back home. And my dad calls me to his chair, his easy chair. And he said, now look, I need you to honestly tell me what you saw. He said, now you know what happens if you lie? I said, yes, sir. So I did, and I told him exactly what happened from start to finish. I told him, I said, Daddy, it was a hairy gorilla, but it had people eyes, like it knew stuff. That's the only way I could explain it as a kid. I guess what I would have said was it's a sentient being. You could see intelligence in those eyes. The eyes were dark, dark brown, and the face looked black with that leather glove look. To me, all I could equate it with was a gorilla. A hairy gorilla. So I told my dad that, and he believed me. I didn't get a whipping. I didn't get any punishment or anything like that, which my dad wasn't about punishment. He'd punish you on the spot. So I was very scared of him. So I told the truth, and I said, Dad, I'm not lying. This really happened to me. Now, a couple of days went by, and he took me riding down the levee in his truck. And he said, son, what you saw was an ancient tribe of Indians who shunned society, and they wanted to live in the woods, and they went wild again. They went feral. He said they got bigger, and they're now hairy and all that. But in his mind, he knew exactly what it was. And then he told me of an encounter he had when he was 17, when he was paralleled out the woods while squirrel hunting. He was very scared, he said, and it was on 2 feet for sure. It was big, and like I said, it escorted him out of the woods. So he totally believed in them, he completely 100% believed in them. That's really all I can say about that encounter. I didn't really see anything. Now, the aftermath of that was treacherous because I was terrified and I couldn't sleep at night. My daddy, like I say, who's an old school Cajun man, actually bought me a light to put on in my room at night. Not a night light, but it was like a lantern light. And I would have nightmares that would wake me up. I had one older sister, and when I would wake up at these times, I'd just go in the living room. A lot of times she'd be reading a book, and she'd look at me over her glasses and just say, Bigfoot? And I'd say, yeah, Bigfoot. Problem with that was I buried that memory for a long time. And then later in life, not 6, 7 years ago, maybe a little more than that, 10 years, I had an epiphany, if you will, a breakthrough. I remembered the whole thing. I relived it one night. And I was not expecting that many nightmares and night terrors. I would have night terrors also where I couldn't move. And it was all due to this, always a Bigfoot chasing me or going to get me on the other side of some brush or whatnot. The aftermath was terrible. I mean, just terrible. Now, I did have one more encounter in that this was later in life and I was a grown man. And I was fishing in my boat. And alongside the levee, they have what's called borrow pits, where they take the clay out and the soil out, dredge it out, and they use it to build a levee. And what's left is these big holes that fill up when the river gets high. And when the river goes down, they clear up real nice. And man, the fishing is just beautiful out there. I mean, you can catch anything out there when it's right. So I went out there, of course, too early in the season. It was still a little cool fishing. And I went out there and I'm not catching anything. I'm paddling around the bank and I'm trying to find anything I can get, So then I look at this spot that's cut back into the woods. And I thought, let me get back up in there and flip my worm and just see if I can catch me a bass. So that's what I did. I paddled over there and I started flipping my worm. Well, right when I got there, this wall smell, it was thick, it was stinky. It smelled like garbage, rotten garbage, urine, and I could smell like the wet dog. So I thought this whole time, I said, man, somebody must have shot a deer and it came and it died right there on the other side of the bushes. That's why it smelled so bad. But I did flip my worm a few times, and then the smell was so bad. I said, you know what? Thought to myself, I'm going to get out this boat, get on the bank, and go find where that kill is, because maybe I can get some antlers out of it or something like that, or just see it, you know? I was curious. So I reached down in my boat, and I pick up my paddle. And when I do, the paddle hits the side of the aluminum boat and makes a huge noise. Bam! And something in front of me, all of a sudden the bushes explode. And something on 2 feet runs away, and I could hear it. Boom, boom, boom. And then jumps in the river on the other side. We're in the bayou. And you could hear it. About whoosh, as it went into the river. And I don't know what happened then, but the smell was gone. But when all this happened, all in a split second, I had then started paddling my boat for the bank to get back to where my truck was so I could get out of there, you know. I was just instantly, I think I knew what it was. Especially when that smell was gone, I heard the 2 feet and then diving into the river on the other side. When there's nobody out there, I mean, nobody but me for a mile or so, you know. But, yeah, and I was going, I even pulled a muscle trying to get back, but I never slowed down. I mean, my boat was flying across that lake. But that's the experience that I had where I didn't see it, but I can guarantee you, I know exactly what that was.
Well, that's it for tonight's show. If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let us know. Thanks for listening. Have a great night.
Seen a bunch of rundown, no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves and the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. The sound of a memory brings me back to the bluegrass playing on my dad's 8-track. It's become man had been through it, getting through the day on Scruggs and Skags, booking their bales to those Tennessee jams. There's no other way that I do it. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. Somebody call it backwards and double time, getting to the soul and the strumming low Kentucky style. Those are the anthems strumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Pace of the city life drives me wild. The only tune is the cars rushing by, with the bass on the stereo mama's best sweet tea. Got the sound